Welcome to Head Honcho. I'm Manish Trivedi. My guest today is an award-winning chef. He's the owner of one of Mumbai's most successful restaurants, and he's a managing director of Degustabus Hotels. Rahul Adhikari is with me today. Rahul, welcome to Head Honcho.
Hey, hi.
Let's talk about the business angle first. You started off with a degree, if I remember right, in biochemistry?
Biochemical engineering.
Biochemical engineering.
Yeah.
And then instead you end up being not only an award-winning chef, you also decide to come into the restaurant business over here. Slight mismatch over there, perhaps?
Not at all. I think, one was education, the other one was vocation. And, I guess in the end, vocation won out. I was broke. I started working in restaurants and decided to stick with it.
We're going to come back to that in just a bit. Let's just talk about your career in the restaurant business in India so far. First one, Under the Over at Kemp's Corner in Bombay.
Right.
Then you moved to Bangalore and you set up there. You come back to Bombay and you open Indigo, and you haven't looked back since, have you?
Not really, no. It's been good, touch wood.
Now, everyone in Bombay, particularly Bombay, tells me you've got to be a fool to be in the restaurant business. You need something like 50 licenses to be able to operate an establishment over here. Why would anyone do it? You have to deal with the police, you've got to deal with the BMC, you've got to deal with the Food and Drugs Administration, you've got to deal with everyone there is. Yet you've managed to get past all that. Indigo has been house full ever since it opened. What's your experience been?
Well, I tell you, it's been interesting because I think very clearly we went into it knowing very clearly what we wanted to do from a point of view. Well, I knew very, very clearly that I needed to reinvent myself food-wise and to get very, very food-focused. Because I'm a great believer that when somebody goes to a restaurant, that's what you're going to do primarily, which is to eat, and the rest is just add-on and helps out. But so I had found over the years that I had kind of strayed a bit from the path, if you will, and needed to get back. And we were very, very keen to do a food-centric place. So that's really what drove us, and we wanted to do a place that would be timeless, hopefully, sort of classic from a sort of stand the test of time point of view, not in terms of style, but clearly a very, very food and hospitality focused place. And when we went through our soft opening, I remember Camellia Punjabi at one of the soft openings telling me, "Rahul, gutsy move, but will it work?" After you've spent about 4 crores doing into a place, a statement like that gives you pause, a lot of pause, and you swallow hard. But I think somewhere along the way, we also knew that what we were doing was absolutely right. I mean, there was real clarity of what we wanted to do at that point. We were also not going to fall prey to external pressures. I mean, everybody has an opinion about what you should be doing and how you should do it and whatever else. And I think it's okay to listen to all those. But at the end of the day, you have a vision of what you want to do, and it's important that you play that out.
Let's talk about that gutsy move, because one of Camellia's colleagues, Hemant Oberoi, who's the executive chef at the Taj, once said to me there are 3 kinds of cuisine in India. There is Punjabi, there is Chinese, and there is Punjabi. Now,
really?
You went away from that, you broke that mold, you broke that tradition. And what has it been? Has it been you creating a new market, or has that market always been there in Bombay and no one's had the good sense to cater to it?
It's a tough question. I think there is something about timing. I think when we opened Under the Over, when we did way back in '92, I think it was right for when we did that. We were packed there too, and it was a sort of eating local, cooking global kind of place. I mean, we had a little Tex-Mex, we had a little Greek, a little Italian, a little Japanese, a little Southeast Asian, everything under one roof. And I remember, in fact, in those days, getting into this menu wars with various coffee shops in the hotels. When we did our menu, they used to revamp theirs, and then we'd play and they'd play. And I think this sort of served to push the whole thing forward a little bit. And I mean, I'm talking about the entire industry, and this sort of white sauce big dish Western food concept slowly got eroded, I think, and it all happened that way. What we do is, it is Western food. I mean, that's the sort of expression. But I think, my taste buds are Indian, my cooks are Indian, my ingredients are for the most part Indian. And so we do Western food in that context. I'm very clear about what we do. I'm not into this sort of authentic game, because I don't know what that means really. But I just do. We had, in the first couple of months when we opened, we had this guy come in to eat at the restaurant, and I was walking through the dining room, and I asked him, I said, "Did you enjoy your meal, and is this your first time here?" And he turned to me and he said, "I have to tell you that there's all this buzz about your place, and I asked friends who had been here to eat what kind of food it was, and nobody could really tell me what it was. It's not Italian, it's not French, it's not European, or this sort of thing." And he said, "But I have to tell you, now that I've eaten here, I can say it's just good food cooked really well, And I said, "Well, thank you." And that's the thing, really, what it's all about. It's just expressing what we're doing, and it's good ingredients, and it's just well made food.
Across the world, you have restaurants that open, restaurants that close. You have fads, because people want this particular type of cuisine, that particular type of cuisine at a particular time.
Right.
As you said, it's timing, but on the other hand, you've stuck to what you started with.
Right.
You haven't readapted, you haven't changed.
Minor tweaks. Yeah.
Has that stood you in good stead?
Yeah, I'm very proactive about what I do. I'm very clear. I keep looking at our own shortcomings. I keep looking at where we can tweak and improve what it is that we're already doing. Just to sort of go with the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Or if it's minorly broken, then repair it a little bit. But that's
we're going to come back and talk more about those repairs. That's with Rahul Akirkar right here on Head Honcho. Stay with us.
And I sold Indian silver jewelry at flea markets in New York. I wound up doing some computer consulting work for an investment bank in New York. I got into a little bit of real estate development with a friend in Philadelphia. But the only constant through all of this was cooking, or was working in restaurants.
Welcome back to Head Honcho. I'm Anish Trivedi, and I'm in conversation with Rahul Akirkar, owner of Mumbai's Indigo restaurant. Rahul, we were talking about you setting up Indigo, about you getting into the restaurant business, but I want to go back to your roots a little over here. You started off, as you said, as a poor student in the US, working your way through university, working at restaurants. Now, if I know the way restaurants in the US work, if you're a poor student, all you're doing is scrubbing dishes, right?
Depends. Well, that's how you all start. Either that, or you're waiting tables, which is also what I did. But I was actually very fortunate, because there was this little. Can I get a piece of cheese?
Please.
There's this little restaurant called Jethro's, where I first started in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and they had a Frenchman by the name of Paul Assot, who who sort of came from Nice and whose family came from like a lineage of chefs and cooks. And Paul was the major domo, valet, sort of man Friday, if you will, of the gentleman who owned the Hamilton Watch Company in Lancaster. And he would come in during his off hours and set the menu and do cooking and do the specials for the day and everything else. And Paul took me under wing and taught me to cook. And it was great because he broke every rule in the FDA. We'd slaughter geese in the basement and make blood jellies and do all these things. I mean, if you ever caught it, Jethro's would have been shut down. But what was great is that I really learned the basics of cooking from him, and then it sort of evolved that way. So while there is truth in what you say about everybody winds up working either as a waiter or a busboy or as a dishwasher, whatever, I eventually moved on to working as a chef.
What happened to the university degree? Did it just get thrown out
Nothing.
the window?
I continued all the way through. In Lancaster, I finished my first bachelor's, and I'd applied to graduate school in New York at Columbia University. I didn't know if I'd get in or not. I wound up, I got in, I wound up doing a second bachelor's. I went from biology to chemical engineering. Then I did a master's in biochemical engineering. Then I started my PhD, did 2 years into that. And all the while I was cooking at night. In '86, all the Genentechs of the world were starting up and I didn't want to do research. And so there was no work for me in my field. So I wound up doing everything else. And I sold Indian silver jewelry at flea markets in New York. I wound up doing some computer consulting work for an investment bank in New York. I got into a little bit of real estate development with a friend in Philadelphia. But the only constant through all of this was cooking or was working in restaurants. One day it just dawned on me that, hey, this is what I like doing and it's what I'm going to stick with.
Now, in all the academic part of it, it didn't occur to you to go to a catering school?
Well, I have to say, for a long time, it was my biggest insecurity. The fact that I had not been to culinary school and that I was not a sort of graduated professional, if you will. And I always felt that was my shortcoming for some reason. I mean, the fact that the sort of depth of experience and what perhaps I knew or had learned or had garnered just by having been on the job through all those years was a lot more than that. Never really came into play. And I think it's not until very recently that I finally overcame that sort of self-imposed inadequacy, if you will.
You think about it. You look at all these chefs, particularly in India, who have been to school, whether it's in India or whether it's overseas. At the end of the day, you're running a highly successful restaurant, and what should matter is the fact that you have people coming back, right?
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Now you've got those people coming back. Before the break, you and I were talking a little about what it takes to break into the Indian market, and I asked you, and I'm still waiting for an answer for this one. When you opened Indigo, was the market there and was there no one catering to it, or did you actually create a market for a new cuisine?
If you go to a place and everyone's wearing the color red, they're wearing the color red for only two reasons. Either everybody loves the color red or the shops only sell red. So if you go back to maybe what Hemant said about the only two types of cuisine in this country that appreciated is what Punjabi or Oriental, maybe it's the shops only selling red. I could not believe or accept that that everybody just loved the color red. I mean, and I also believed, and I still do, that if you offer green and blue, that maybe people will start wearing different colors, and that's exactly what we did. But to come back to what you're saying is that there is a sense of timing for everything. I think if we had opened an Indigo level place when we first did Under the Over, I think it may not have worked at the time because it was too far advanced to be accepted perhaps here. Even though people traveled, even though people had been all over the world and people continue to, it just may have been too much before its time. I don't know.
Now, in the whole mold of if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
When you opened your second place, the Indigo Delhi, you didn't do anything overly different. The style remains the same. The kind of cuisine that you get. If you look at lunch at Indigo, if you look at lunch at the Delhi, there's a similarity over there between what's on offer. You didn't say, okay, we're going to do Thai food or we're going to do sushi. You stuck to what you were doing very well. Was that a conscious decision, or was that the market saying, here's what we want?
I think, well, it was very much a conscious decision. I also don't think that it's the same food. I will argue that point of view. Yes, perhaps it's done in the same delivery of quality and consciousness about how we put it together, but it's not the same level of complexity that we have at Indigo. It is much more basic. Our sandwiches are very sort of rustic and oversized and that sort of thing. And I just felt that there was a niche for and a need for that kind of food here, like a good hamburger or a nice oversized sandwich, that sort of thing. Yeah?
But you're also doing, let's look at what you're doing. You're doing things differently. You're also open at 7:30 in the morning for breakfast.
Yeah.
Which no place outside of a hotel coffee shop
Right.
has been before this.
That's actually the hard part, and it's a constant tussle with us whether to keep at it or to shut it down, because I'll be honest, it's not doing great. It has been picking up, and that's what gives us hope. And I will stick on with it. I think it's to do with our culture. I think the Indian starts his day late. Myself included. So it's just doing a place that offers breakfast is very, very tough to do. But the breakfast volume or the sale, if you will, is still perhaps not what it ought to be.
Let me ask you this, on a business point.
Yeah.
Both your restaurants are within 100 meters of each other.
Yeah.
They're not dissimilar, and you and I will argue this off camera,
Okay.
in what they offer. Have you cannibalized your own business by opening the deli where you did?
I don't think so. Couple of things. I'm a great believer, which is also a reason which I haven't moved to other cities yet. I'm a great believer that it's important that I sort of visit the outlets every day. This is a sort of hands-on kind of job. It is it's a perception management job too. And while it's easy to open restaurants all over the place, it just needs somebody to sign a bunch of checks. I think also choice is good. There's the old saying that if you have a bhel puri wala on the beach, one at this end and one at that end of the beach, and both are doing a certain amount of business, if they both move close together and they will actually double their business, and you put 3 and 4 together and you have a whole bunch of people coming there to eat, and you actually wind up doing more you wind up doing more business. So like I think the more you have is not necessarily cannibalizing what you do. Yes, if like we were to open another Indigo exact replica kind of thing, then you would eat into yourself a little bit. But I don't think this is doing that.
More on eating, more on food. We're going to come back and talk with Rahul Adhikari on Head Honcho right after this. You've had starts, you've had shutdowns, you've had starts, you've had shutdowns, you've had success now. Any regrets?
Regret that would have been, I guess, none really. I'm being a little guarded here. But I think one, if I had been a little more business savvy way up front, I might have structured myself a little differently.
Welcome back to Head Honcho. I'm Anish Trivedi. I'm in conversation with Rahul Adhikari. We're talking about food, we're talking about restaurants, and we're about to talk about the good life as well. Rahul, what happens next? Now, I know for a long time you were sitting holed up in Alibag, writing a cookbook. When is that going to see the light of day?
It's actually on hold right now. It's like on the back burner, so to speak. No, what's happened is, the sort of usual toss-up between business and being a chef and everything else, and we're looking at some new projects and things like that right now, and so I've been a bit sidetracked from that point of view, and I think the cookbook has to go on hold for a short while.
Let me ask you this. Which hat do you end up wearing more often, the chef or the restaurateur, the businessman, the managing director of the company, or the guy who wants to be in the kitchen?
I don't know, and that's always the hard one. It sort of depends how I wake up every day. There are some days I wake up and I want to be that chef, and there's some days I wake up and I want to be a restaurateur. And it's really tough to try and make them both meet, because they really don't. I mean, pushing Excel spreadsheets in the office has nothing to do with cooking, and they are both realities, and that's really the hardest part, is to try and find that balance.
In finding that balance, one of the things that you've managed to do is find the balance between work and family. Your wife Malini works with you. Oh yeah, wait till she sees this show. How has that worked out? Because you both complement each other. You both have different skills that you bring to the table. And between the two of you, you've managed to run a successful business.
Finally, yes. For I think a long time, Malu and I, it was like rough on us, because we never defined our roles within the operation. And I think now with Indigo, one of the first things that she said is that if we are going to survive, and hats off to her for like having that clairvoyance, that sort of clairvoyance, that if we are to survive, I think as a family unit, because it is untold pressure, that it's very important that we clearly define our roles up front, and that's what we've done, when we've tried very much to stick to that. Having said that, it is also hell on us, because unlike other jobs that end at 6 in the evening, and you come home, you spend time with the kids, and then you think our sort of evening starts again, so it's like around the clock thing for us.
Leave aside the work equation. The arguments that you had at work ended up being the arguments at home as well.
That happens.
Did you have that? Yeah.
It still happens. It still happens, and as I said, that's also very hard, and it's like hard to balance that.
Let me ask you this. You start thinking your career is going in one direction. It goes in a completely different direction. You've had starts, you've had shutdowns, you've had starts, you've had shutdowns, you've had success now. Any regrets?
Tough one. Regrets from sort of having done what I've done? No. Or how I've done what I've done? No. Perhaps maybe one regret that would have been, I guess none really. I'm being a little guarded here, but I think one, if I had been a little more business savvy way up front, I might have structured myself a little differently. But I'm not going to say more than that.
You're rolling in the money right now. You're doing fine, Rahul. I don't think you need to worry at all.
Cheers.
Your health. Rahul Adhikari, my guest on Head Honcho today. I'm Anish Trivedi. We'll be back next week. Until then, goodbye.